Greetings, Facebook Live. Ben Axelrod, Matt Florjancic coming to you live from the WKYC studios. Cleveland Browns, Hard Knocks training camp with the Cleveland Browns, episode 2 airing last night. Matt, I watched these episodes. I've been watching Hard Knocks since it started, so that 2007, so more than 10 years now. I don't think I've ever seen a franchise more fit for for Hard Knocks than the Cleveland Browns. I think this should be a staple of Hard Knocks. It should be about the Cleveland Browns. Maybe every few years you mix in another team, but this is very much a Cleveland Browns show. We saw it in the premiere episode a week ago, and lo and behold, we start things off with a bang yesterday in episode 2 with the trade of Corey Coleman.
Yeah, we were coming out of the box hot last night, really even before the opening montage rolled. Mm-hmm. Corey Coleman's asking for a trade, and then come out of the break, adios Cleveland, he's gone to Buffalo. It's like, whoa, that happened quickly. So, Corey Coleman was not happy about his demotion to the second-team offense. Right. And in the opening scene, we saw a lot of Todd Haley really getting after Corey Coleman for not being consistent, not going after the ball, not catching balls that are well within his catch radius. And they were fed up with him, so they sent him down to the second team. Next thing you know, he's going into the office complaining about it, and next thing you know, he's jettisoned to the Bills.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about it, too, is if you watch the premiere and you saw the scenes from the next Hard Knocks, you saw the clips from this episode, you saw when they hinted at the Corey Coleman trade because it had already happened by the time the first episode aired last Tuesday, and they showed this scene between Hugh Jackson and Corey Coleman that looked kind of intense.
Yeah.
And
just without sound.
There wasn't any audio, so you didn't know if, okay, maybe they're playing this thing up. But lo and behold, Corey Coleman goes in there and he says, if you guys don't want to play me, why don't you guys trade me? And then I'm guessing sometime shortly after that, he was in fact traded. I'm glad you mentioned the montage, though, of kind of his missteps. I think one thing that's important to remember with Hard Knocks is it's a TV show. It's not a documentary. And so we're seeing these – it's really tough to pick and choose, what you take away from these episodes. But I thought one thing that stood out was that it was Todd Haley who was consistently getting on him. And then when he went when Corey Coleman went to Hugh Jackson and said, why don't you guys trade me, Hugh Jackson's response was, let's go talk to Todd Haley. And so it felt to me like Corey Coleman was kind of Todd Haley's – I don't know if pet project is the right word, but it seemed like Corey Coleman and Todd Haley got off on the wrong foot, and they never really came back from that.
No question about it. They had differences of opinion, disagreements, if you will. There was just not something that was working between the two of them, and the end result is Corey Coleman got demoted for lack of production in camp, and he was very frustrated with it. Didn't seem like he wanted to go talk to Todd Haley from what we saw in Hard Knocks. And, again, it's a very small snippet of how that meeting probably really went.
And who knows how far before the trade that actually was.
Right. And also if there was, in fact, a conversation between Todd Haley and Corey Coleman. But when he went into Hugh's office, he made it very clear his intentions or his desires, and the Browns did the best that they could to oblige him. The thing that I found most interesting was when Emmanuel Ogbah was sitting in the defensive lineman room, and they're talking about the trade, and he's like, man, a 7th-round pick in 2020? That's like, man, we don't need your stuff around here. Get the you-know-what out of here. And I'm like, I don't think it could have been said any better.
Yeah.
Very, very succinct and very accurate by Emmanuel Ogbah.
Yeah, Corey Coleman's draft classmate, Emmanuel Ogbah. Yeah, that's what he was saying. It wasn't only a 7th-round pick. It was a 2020 7th-round pick. He was saying basically they might as well have cut him. Like I said, I've been watching Hard Knocks now for more than 10 years, and that would have been a scene stealer. That would have been one of the most memorable scenes from any season. And then you go from that to Antonio Callaway's marijuana citation in Strongsville. I mean, this was as jam-packed of a first half hour of any Hard Knocks episode as I've seen. Usually, they get to the tight end David Cajuste. They get to him. Usually that's like what Hard Knocks is mostly made up of. We didn't get to that until like 45 minutes into the episode.
There was too much news. I mean, the wide receiver position really kind of stole the spotlight for that first half hour. And after watching it a couple times, you're like, man, that was like a whole episode unto itself. Yeah. And then there was still more. I mean, there was Myles Garrett, the poet. There was Devin Cajuste, the tight end, in his story with his dad. Very emotional. I mean, they're going to hit you in the gut, every episode with that emotional storyline, and they sure did. But before we get to that, the story of Antonio Callaway. wow, that was an arching story that really took many on many levels. You could tell right away they knew something was up.
Right.
Todd Haley couldn't get him to crack a smile. Hugh Jackson couldn't get him to smile. And this kid looked like he was scared to death on the sidelines, like he knew the hammer was above his head, and he was just waiting to get hit with it.
On a day he was promoted to the Browns first team, too, or where he was taking a lot of reps with the Browns first team. And you're right. Again, who knows how it was edited, but it was certainly made to seem that everybody thought something was up with Antonio Callaway. And then when you have that scene where Hugh Jackson and John Dorsey find out and they sit him down, I was impressed with how they handled it. They were very straightforward with him. Hugh Jackson said, if you're lying to me, then it's going to be you. And he used a little more colorful language, but he let it be known that he does not want to be played within this situation. They had Antonio Callaway come up and apologize to the team. It's clear they really like Antonio Callaway. They think he's a really talented player. They have said more nice things about him in 6 weeks than they've said about Corey Coleman in 2 years. But yes, that obviously this is an issue, and it was interesting to see how all of it unfolded from him knowing that hammer was coming to the Browns finding out about it to how they went about punishing him in the preseason game.
Yeah.
Punishing him.
By playing him in the entire preseason game. I was very impressed by how they handled the whole thing. I thought John Dorsey came off more of the motivator, where he was like, come on, everybody wants you to fail. There are people out there that you just have to get comfortable with wanting you to fail. Prove them wrong. And Hugh kind of was a little bit more of the stronger type, where he was basically like, I trust you now, but if I find out you're lying to me, you're done. I'm not going to put up with this anymore. And I thought that was kind of a reversal of roles. It was good cop, bad cop almost, and you would have expected John Dorsey to be more of the hammer in that situation and Hugh Jackson to be more of the kind of like big brother type. But that was not the case. Hugh came off very strong in that scene, and he set a tone. He called Antonio up in front of the team, and he basically said everybody gets one mistake, but you better make sure that mulligan is the truth, because if it's not, you're gone. This is too hard of a job to do when everything's straight. Now, with all this other side stuff, we're not putting up with it anymore. And I thought that was a pretty incredible tone, because this team has put up with an awful lot, and there's a certain other wide receiver who's not in training camp right now, who they've put up with an extremely large amount with off the field, and yet they still stand by him. But Callaway gets the one and done rule, and it's kind of like, okay, I understand the culture change, but then why do you still have that other dude on the roster? Because look, they're both freak athletes. One's just 6'3" and carved out of granite. The other is slightly more diminutive at 5'11", but runs like a gazelle. So it's not consistent at all, and I'm starting to wonder if those whole Josh Gordon not wanting to be on Hard Knocks things have a little bit more legs to them than we give it credit for.
It very well could. That still kind of looms over all this. We touched on the David Kajus storyline, and I expect we'll see more of those type of storylines moving forward, unless Josh Gordon comes back. Who knows? It's the Browns. There's going to be news-worthy items in every episode of the series, I would imagine. But I would expect more of those player-type features. But I think the other thing that's cool about Hard Knocks, and the show wrapped up with, it was the preseason opener against the Giants, and that's more, you get more of the NFL films type of stuff, where you hear Baker Mayfield on the sideline, you hear him in the huddle. That stuff's cool. That's like some of the coolest stuff. You get a little bit of that throughout the season, though. I think some of the coolest stuff, though, about Hard Knocks are the moments like when Tyrod Taylor is talking to Hugh Jackson, and they're talking about how poor the Browns' practice habits are. And Tyrod, or Tyrod, or however we're pronouncing it today, he says to Hugh, show that in film session. You see his veteran presence on this roster, and how valuable he is to this team. And I thought that was one of those really interesting moments where Hugh's really confiding in this guy who's a first-year player on this team, and essentially saying, what can I do? We are not practicing. We are not hustling the way I'm accustomed to. Yeah,
there was a lot of respect shown by Hugh Jackson toward Tyrod Taylor. And I've got to be honest, I'm not taking anything away from Tyrod the player, because I think he's got a heck of a future ahead of him still in this league. But you could tell the seeds have been planted. This guy is a coach in waiting.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a mature quarterback thing. Like we've said it about Josh McCown would be an outstanding offensive coordinator. Tyrod Taylor will be a great coach if he decides to go that route after his playing career, which I hope is not for a very long time, mind you, because I want him to lead the Cleveland Browns to much success and experience NFL success. But the bond between Hugh and Tyrod Taylor is something that Hugh grossly missed last year.
Right.
He did not have anybody at really any position that he could go to and be like, how can I better motivate the players? Other than Joe Thomas, there was nobody. There was nobody at the quarterback position. There was nobody at the wide receiver position. There was nobody at the tight end position. There, realistically, other than Christian Kirksey and Jamie Collins, there was nobody on the defense at all. So you're seeing a different Hugh Jackson because of the veterans. You're not just seeing a different Browns team on the field. You're seeing an entirely different channel of this coach who has finally some trust in a player that's going to lead the offense.
I think, we talked so much, or at least there was a lot of conversation back when the Browns acquired Tyrod, when they acquired Jarvis Landry. Did they give up too much? Did they pay too much to Jarvis Landry? Did they give up too much for Demarius Randall? I think, and you know what, maybe if you want to look at this through spreadsheets and all of that, then there's a discussion to be had. We're
not analytics based here. We're just football based.
There was actually I'm glad you said that, because that reminded me of another interesting scene. But it is invaluable, the leadership that Tyrod and Jarvis Landry have provided, to have adults in that locker room. Todd Haley coming up to Jarvis Landry on the sideline at the end of the Giants game and saying, please take Antonio Callaway under your wing. Have him over to your house. Don't let him go. That's what Larry Fitzgerald would do.
Right. We need him on the field.
Yeah, that stood out. And that's something, who would you have gone to last year? Kenny Britt? Kenny Britt did take Corey Coleman under his wing, and we saw how that turned out.
Yeah,
it is invaluable to have adults on this team, and that is something that, you go from just a quarterback room a year ago with Kevin Hogan, Cody Kessler, and DeShone Kizer, to now you have Tyrod Taylor, Drew Stanton, and Baker Mayfield, and maybe Brogan Roback. It's night and day. And I can't even imagine what that locker room has been like the last 2 years when you see it. It's still a young locker room, but now they have some veterans. Now they have some adults around.
Yeah, no question about it. And it's funny to me to talk about Tyrod Taylor leading the offense and the quarterback room being settled, because in the 10 years that I've been covering this team, I don't think at any point, other than maybe when Brian Hoyer was here for that 16-game stretch over 2 years, did I feel like the quarterback position was in capable hands from an everything standpoint. Under Josh McCown, you're not going to find a better leader. But Josh was often injured, and, in and out of the lineup. But realistically, Tyrod Taylor is that guy for the entire team, but especially at quarterback. And when we talk about the wide receiver room with Jarvis Landry, okay, we let Kenny Britt go, and he was an 8-year veteran going on in his 9th season when we got him. We bring in a guy who's in his 5th season, and the leadership difference is insane. Yeah. The younger guy doesn't even belong in the same conversation with Kenny Britt, because that would be an insult to Jarvis Landry. Jarvis is such a good leader for that room, and he's such a good example. Whatever they paid for him in draft picks is worth it. I know all the analytics-based people will say, you've got to draft, but you need people to lead. And they gave up a 3rd-rounder for Tyrod Taylor. They gave up a few picks for Jarvis Landry. Those price tags were invaluable for this franchise, because what they got back was ridiculous. You're not going to get a starting quarterback in the 3rd round, likely, unless you hit the mega lottery in the draft. You're not going to get a Pro Bowl wide receiver in the 6th round or in the 4th round. I mean, you may get one every once in a while, but the statistics will say, the more darts you throw at the board, the better your chances are. Forget it.
Browns have thrown a lot of darts the last 3 years.
And you know what? Some of those darts are already on their way out of the league after just 2 years. I mean, you're looking at Emmanuel Ogbah and Rashard Higgins being the only 2 worthwhile picks out of a draft that was held 2 years ago. Yeah. Seth DeValve can't get on the field because of injuries. Corey Coleman's playing for Buffalo, and everybody else is pretty much out of the league, with exception of Ricardo Lewis, who underwent season-ending neck surgery not too long ago. The leadership that they brought in by using assets in a different way cannot be understated.
No, I agree completely, and that's something I think that was very apparent. And you know what, just to touch on Tyrod one more time, I know people are very sensitive to the Tyrod Taylor, Baker Mayfield debate, because it's been established that Tyrod is the starter. That debate is not going away until Baker takes over, because of who Baker is, because he was taken with the #1 pick. But it's such a healthier debate than any other quarterback discussion we've had in the last 10 years. I know people are very sensitive to it, and I understand that, and it's nice to finally know who the Browns' starting quarterback is. But when those are your two options, it's a much healthier discussion.
To me, it's refreshing because we're not looking at who did the least wrong in practice.
Right.
I go back to my first year was Brady Quinn and Derek Anderson. And it wasn't so much who won, it was who less lost. Mm-hmm. And that's been the case for the better part of the last decade for this team, probably the entire decade. Yeah. It was not only, how we were going to fix it, but the quarterback position, but how we were going to minimize the mistakes. You don't have that in this camp. You have guys that are making legitimate NFL throws. The throw Baker Mayfield made to Antonio Callaway on the sideline was one of the most impressive throws I've seen from a quarterback in the time I've been covering the Browns. Off his back foot, rolling to his right, winging it down the field with a defender in his face, bam, 30-something yard completion right on the sideline. Awesome catch, awesome throw. You have not seen that in Cleveland in a very long time, and that's why people are enamored with Baker Mayfield because he makes those plays. But you look at Tyrod Taylor, and he went 5 for 5 for 99 yards with a touchdown, and nobody's talking about him, which, might not be a bad thing.
Right.
All the pressure's off of him. He just has to go out and do what he's capable of doing, play within his skill set, and life is going to be good for the Cleveland Browns no matter who goes out there at quarterback, and that's so refreshing to hear and to say because that's never been the case really since they came back in '99.
Yep. Real quick, one more thing I want to hit on, and then we'll get out of here. There was a scene where John Dorsey was sitting down with the Browns. I think it was an analyst. I can't recall his name. He's a guy who comes from Football Outsiders, so I know he's an advanced analytics type of guy. I thought that was a very interesting dynamic. John Dorsey was asking about available wide receivers, and the list was kind of shaky. I think it was a lot of trade targets. But John Dorsey asks specifically about Dez Bryant, and the analyst kind of dismisses the idea. Dez Bryant's on the list, but further down. He kind of dismisses the idea of bringing in Dez Bryant, noting that Dez Bryant is 30. John Dorsey points out he's actually only 29, which is somebody who is 29. I was very sensitive to that comment. And then the analyst gets into that. He's like 29.7 or whatever. That's something that, spinning this thing forward, the Bills come to town on Friday. It's Tyrod Taylor's former team. It's Corey Coleman coming back to Cleveland. And Dez Bryant is visiting Cleveland tomorrow. Just spinning this thing forward, I think next week's episode has already kind of written itself.
Oh, no question about it. And they even teased it about Corey Coleman coming back, Tyrod Taylor playing against his old team.
And the Hard Knocks cameras went with him to Buffalo.
And I'm interested to see how that first foray in Buffalo goes. Because remember, if you read into Twitter at all, he wasn't really excited about going to Buffalo, and he was contemplating his future in the NFL. That's some serious issues right there that he has to work out with a brand new team. It's next week's episode is going to be fire out of the box. We know, coming in, there's so many storylines. We just can't wait to see what next week holds. Because, trailer at the end of episode 1 for episode 2 did not disappoint.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to episode 3 next Tuesday night. It should be a good one.
Yeah, it definitely should be. Matt's got to get out to Berea. Todd Haley meeting with the media today. Todd Haley, another unsung star of the show.
I'm sure that's going to be an interesting press conference, probably a 15-minute one at least.
Yeah. But keep it locked on WKYC and WKYC.com throughout the day. We'll have you covered on all the latest from Berea, from Browns training camp, and everything going on around the Cleveland sports scene. For Matt Florjancic, I'm Ben Axelrod. Thanks for watching on Facebook Live.